Just when you thought the witch from Mercury couldn't get any more depressing, it goes and it does this.
This is the worst!
Powerful Nerdcast assembled!
Stay dandy, baby. Greetings, my friends. It's time to talk about the latest shocking episode of Mobile Suit Gundam, The Witch from Mercury. I don't know how the series does it. Every single episode, they just up the ante in terms of emotional damage. This is an episode which left me feeling deeply disturbed by the end of the episode. If not for the intense battle scenes that take place, the sudden character deaths, or just the absolute bleakness of the ending, this is an episode which will affect people in a lot of different ways. Now, for those who've been following the Gundam franchise for a long time, this is really nothing new for the franchise. I mean, this is just sort of the par of the course for Gundam. But this episode right here was deeply disturbing in the sense that it involved the multiple deaths of a lot of children. Children with hopes, children with dreams. It's something that I really think is going to be deeply disturbing for a lot of viewers. That makes this one heavy episode right here, and I have to say, it might be one of the most tragic of the entire series. The actual title of the episode itself, which is basically The End of Hope, pretty much gives you an idea of what you're going to be getting from this one right here. And while that is incredibly nihilistic and really just emotionally disturbing, there is still a glimmer of light at the end of the tunnel of this episode, and a lot of that is going to come for what the future is going to hold for G-Witch, but we're just going to have to see how that's going to unfold. For now, let's talk about the latest episode of the series, which for the most part was basically just a massive armed conflict, which means lots of really epic mobile suit duels and getting to see characters go in a direction that I honestly did not expect. So let's go ahead and dive into the juiciest parts of this episode. So right out the gate, this one wastes no time in immediately getting to the conflict. After the end of the last episode, we got to see that both Gwail and Kananji had learned about what Shadiq was doing, working in the shadows and funding the Dawn of Fold, so they immediately decide that they're going to try and infiltrate him, go after him, get some sort of evidence to prove that he's the one who's been behind all of these crazy shenanigans. Of course, this almost immediately turns into conflict between his group and theirs, and the mobile suits come out and the battling starts happening. And Gwail and Shadiq have an amazingly intense battle in this episode. One of the most intense, I'd say, probably of this entire series right here. Like most classic Gundam duels, it's not just a feast for the eyes of seeing two giant robots just rip into each other with all of their really cool abilities and everything, but of course it's also a battle of ideologies, and of course a battle of the minds, as Shadiq does everything he can to get into the head of Gwail during this entire battle, also knowing full well that while this battle is going on, a lot of people are actually listening in on their conversation. He takes advantage of this by mentioning that Gwail is actually the one who is responsible for killing his father, despite the fact that Shadiq is the one who sort of set up that entire conflict. Gwail's brother Lauda hears this during this entire conversation. You can see that his entire world is just absolutely crushed about learning this. I mean, he was already having to mourn the death of his father, but learning that his brother was responsible for it, you can only imagine what he's going to do after this entire conflict. But this entire battle right here is nothing short of just awesome. These two distinctive mobile suits, which aren't even Gundams, are just having one of the best battles of the entire series, and Shadiq pretty much has no problem with sort of just letting it all out at this point. I mean, going as far as to even allowing Alon Saris, Nika, and Noria to escape from their prison, and allowing Noria to get into her signature mobile suit, the Thorn, to cause all sorts of ridiculous damage, and that might be the most disturbing thing about this episode. For the last couple of episodes, Noria has just been absolutely brewing as she's been locked up in this room with Alon, someone that she absolutely cannot stand, and just fueling her hatred of everyone that is from space, not to mention reeling over the death of Sophie, and she wants nothing more than to get revenge against this system which props up those from space and basically shits on those from Earth. And she desperately makes an escape to her mobile suit, the Thorn, and Alon surprisingly tries to stop her. You can see that during this time period, he started to sympathize and empathize with her character, and a lot of that is owed to the fact that Alon himself is a character, at least least this version of Alon anyway, who prioritizes self-preservation. And he realizes that if Noria continues to go down this path, it's only going to result in her death and the deaths of many other people. And he desperately tries to appeal to her sense of humanity, trying to get her to realize that she's not the violent psychopath that she makes herself out to be. She's a loving girl who has an appreciation for art, and she can change things. But it's just too far. She's been pushed way too much, and now she is going to get her revenge. Taking her mobile suit back and taking control out of all of the Gunvolvas, the Gundam bits, if you will, going out immediately into Ostacazia and just opening fire on everyone. Destroying buildings, killing students, and it is just fucked. It's one thing to see armed conflict between adults who are in a war setting. It's another to see a bunch of students who are just trying to learn at a school suddenly being attacked by giant war machines. And most disturbing of all is that it's so relatable. The Gundam anime franchise has always done a pretty good job of like putting a mirror up to our very own real world, and it's all too real in this episode right here. I mean, not in the sense of giant robots, but just the senseless violence that happens in the world and the things that we have to endure every day, to the point where we've become desensitized to these type of things. And when we actually see it in this episode right here, it almost felt kind of normal, which was very scary and disturbing to actually think about. But the more I actually watched it, the more I realized just, wow, this is just too realistic in some senses, and it just kind of destroyed me a little bit. Honestly, it's kind of hard to put into words what this episode actually did to me on an emotional level. I think you just kind of had to be there in the moment when I was watching it. And I have a feeling that everybody's going to have kind of a different experience with it when they're watching it. And I'd absolutely love to get all your thoughts about that in the comments section below, about how this episode actually affected you on an emotional level. But it was even more sad with the fact that Noria had an opportunity to turn things around, to start a new life, to abandon this fruitless revenge, and instead she ends up choosing violence. And ultimately it does not have a good result. Like I said, resulting in the deaths of multiple students, everybody starts to panic, and even worse, it gets the attention of all of the different security and their forces who come into Ostacazia, getting into a fight with her as well, as she simply just destroys everything. Amidst the chaos, Suletta and Earthhouse desperately try to escape. Suletta ends up meeting with Petra, who helps her, trying to get some injured students out of the school before they themselves end up getting caught in the crossfire themselves, which I do believe actually results in the death of Petra, which is made even more sad by the fact that for the last couple of episodes, they've managed to develop her character, her relationship with Lotta, Gwale's brother, and the fact that she simply seems to want to have a strong relationship with him, knowing that if she gets out of this situation and ends up saving people, Lotta will have no choice but to recognize her and her appreciation for him. And that scene where Suletta sees her actually being crushed is just heartbreaking. Just absolutely gut-wrenching. Before we get to the ending, however, let's talk about that battle between Gwale and Shadiq, which, like I said, only intensifies as the actual episode goes on. And at first, it really seems like Gwale is just going to be completely wrecked by Shadiq and his superior piloting skills, but he actually manages to fight back with a little bit of help from his friends, and even manages to defeat Shadiq, basically just slicing his mobile suit up into multiple parts, removing the arms and the legs, and effectively forcing him to lose the battle. And rather than get his full revenge and kill Shadiq, Gwale manages to let him live. He refuses to let this character die, and I love that. It's extreme development for his character. He could have gone on the warpath and just decided to kill this guy, but he's going to bring him to justice instead. He wants to bring his crimes to light, and this is such a big development for a character that was effectively the school bully at the beginning of the series. God help me, Gwale is the best character of the entire show. As for what this is going to mean for Shadiq in the future and his followers remains to be seen. You know, there was no sign of Prospera in this entire episode, and I can only imagine that she's just in the back somewhere planning her next big move. but this seems like it's going to be the end of his plans here, which could all end up being just a big distraction while Prospero works in the background. But I absolutely loved the ideological battle between Shadiq and Gwail in this episode. It was classic Gundam in so many different ways, where Shadiq himself even mentions if it weren't for some of the actions of Gwail and Miorine and everything, he wouldn't even have had to resort to violence. But he realized that this was his only option at this point, and if it meant the deaths of fellow students, he was going to do it. He was fully convinced that what he was doing was the right path, and it's so amazing and poetic that he was defeated by someone who ultimately he ended up screwing, and he didn't end up killing him in the end. It's a pretty powerful moment, and it was great seeing Gwail actually show a little bit of restraint here. It's just such great growth for his character. But of course, everything goes downhill by the end of the episode. When we go back to Ostacazia, we see that Noria is still going insane, destroying everyone, and Alon gets in that other Gundam and desperately tries to stop her, and it looks like he almost convinces her, like maybe she will turn around, change her ways, and try to escape. He even goes as far as saying that they could escape together. They could be together. They could be friends. They could change things. These are two characters who've ultimately basically been chained up their entire lives and transformed into living weapons. But now they have an opportunity to actually be something more than that. And right as this happens, you see the targeting reticle on Noria's mobile suit. And right as she turns to Alon with a huge smile on her face, suddenly she is killed. A massive beam blast going through her mobile suit, killing her instantly as she falls to the ground, causing Alon to effectively go insane, start attacking before he makes a quick escape. And then the episode ends, and the only thing that's left is fire, death, and destruction. The final moments of this episode, I think, are honestly the most disturbing. It's the quiet moments. It's the use of that atmospheric music and looking at the aftermath of everything that happened at this school. Destroyed mobile suits, dead students, buildings destroyed, and nothing left but the Earth House looking at the shattered remains of everything they've worked so hard to build. And most importantly, at the end of the day, in what might be, I think, the strongest scene of the entire episode, not the mobile suit battles, not Noria's death, not Gwail versus Shadiq, but it's Suletta desperately trying to save her fellow students, knowing that potentially some of them could be alive. There is hope at the end of the day. Despite the name of this episode, there's a small glimmer of hope, and as cheesy as it might actually seem, as long as you hold on to that just a little bit, you can change things. You can make the world a better place. And that's what made this episode so powerful for me. For all the terrible things that Suletta has gone through, all of the revelations about who she is as a person, her mother's true goals, the loss of her friends and Miorine, she still manages to stand strong, trying to save people. I have to say that moment where she actually saw Petra crushed by all of those rocks and rubble was really amazing for her character, especially considering how the last season ended with her killing that soldier. Now she's getting to see it from a completely different angle. You've gotten to see how she's been rejected by so many different people, and it's put her in this place where she could transform into a villain. A lot of people are theorizing that Suletta was going to end up being like, you know, some sort of like edgy Shadow the Hedgehog kind of villainous character by the end of the series, but in many ways, now she's propping herself up as a much stronger, more heroic character that I think a lot of people can truly look up to. It's this complexity in her main character and, of course, all the other characters in the series that make this one of the strongest character Gundam anime that I've ever seen. And I've said it so many times in some of my previous review, and it's kind of hard for me to articulate because I'm not the smartest guy in the world. But I will say that it truly is the characters that define this entire anime. The robots, the mecha, all that stuff is really cool, and this definitely featured some of the best mobile suit battling that I've ever seen, whether it's Gwail or Shadiq, or that amazing moment with Noria towards the end of the episode as she's just going nuts. It all was a spectacle to be seen. But it's that humanity in those characters that draw me in every week, and this one right here, just wow. I was biting my lip, quivering and holding back those tears as hard as I could, and I was really shocked that the series was able to bring that kind of emotion out of me. There's not too many anime that can actually do that, and that's why I think this one is truly special and a powerful series that a lot of people need to check out. This episode right here felt like a true finale in many ways, but there's still so much more left for the end of this season, and I still don't quite know if they're going to be able to wrap it all up perfectly, but we're just going to have to see. For now, for what it is, this episode right here was certainly an amazing experience that you need to check out, and most importantly, if you're probably already watching this review, you've probably already watched the episode, and I really just want to hear from you guys about it, about the amazing battles that took place, the great characterization from Gwail and Shadiq, and of course that amazingly shocking moment with Noria. It's not the first time we've had a shocking death in any Gundam anime, but this one right here, I don't know what it was, but it just managed to hurt really bad. And yet, even at the end of all of that, like I said, despite the name of the episode, there is a glimmer of hope at the very end of the episode. So I'd love to get your thoughts about it. I personally loved this episode. I thought it was just an emotional roller coaster of amazingness. I can't praise it enough. It featured some of the best, most intense battles from the entire series. Some really fantastic animation. Great use of atmospheric music, especially at the end of the episode. Some of the images after, the big battle, I think are some of my favorite images from the entire show. Just, man, this one just bled style. I loved it so much. So yeah, I adored it. But you guys might have loved it, you might have hated it. Let's talk all about it in the comments section below, and of course what you guys are hoping to see from the rest of Mobile Suit Gundam: The Witch from Mercury. Thank you so much for watching this video. I'll see you all next time, and as always, stay dandy, baby.